Why is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
We're not a political show,
No,
but um, I'm sure you saw that they voted to keep the government open for something
I
like 45
did.
more days.
Yes.
So do you know what that means?
What?
Fat Bear Week is back on.
Oh, thank God.
It was on the verge of being canceled due to the government shutdown because those who run Fat Bear Week are government employees, and apparently they're deemed non-essential.
What?
This is what I've heard.
Well, that's just a travesty.
Yes. So Fat Bears are back on.
Thank God. I'm so glad I didn't realize it was a risk because that would have really put me in a tailspin.
I get it. I understand.
This is Why, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
But I guess to get started, Steinholding, why?
Okay, that's the question.
Yeah. That's
a fair question. That's a fair question. I don't know if I have a sufficient answer for you, but I'll do my best. I think. So I'll give you a little bit of the history, at least as far as apocryphal history of what I've been told about Steinholding, or uh, Maßkrugsstemmen is the German word that is used
easy
for
for you to say.
Steinholding.
Yeah.
It's taken me about 12 years to be able to even spit it out that well, which is probably still incorrect. But we use the term Steinholding for the English audience, just because it's a little bit easier. They throw a lot of extra consonants in there when they try to say Maßkrugsstemmen, so we just go with Steinholding. But so the sort of the story is that at Oktoberfest and in Munich, in the beer gardens and the beer halls, Maßkrugsstemmen was just sort of a way to just, people hanging out, having a couple beers, maybe have a disagreement about something, and they say, all right, let's settle it like men, or whatever. I don't know, like whatever they would have said back, 100 years ago in Germany. And they would say, okay, let's have a competition. Everybody's got a Maßkrug in their hands already anyway. And they say, let's just do it, see who can go the longest. And it was a way to settle disagreements, or just see who was kind of the toughest person around. So that's kind of how it has been described to me. In terms of the roots of the sport. Since then it's gotten a little bit more complicated, I guess you could say, in terms of the rules that have been applied to it, and some of the other the trappings that we've added to the sport to make it a little bit more consistent. But that's kind of how it started.
But really, it is literally holding a stein at literal arm's length out for as long as you possibly can.
Yeah. There's a little, there's only slightly more nuance to it than that, but yes, that's essentially it. Yeah.
So what's the nuance?
Exactly. Yes.
Well, so there are some. I tried to set up a little bit here so I could give a little bit of a demonstration. So
we love show and tell.
I'll just briefly go through the rules just to give you a little bit of it. So we have like I think probably 15 different rules that we sort of spelled out just to make everything consistent on the website and stuff like that. But basically, like you said, it needs to just be a straight arm, no bending of the elbow, parallel to the ground, perpendicular to the body. You can't sort of cross over and make a shelf with your chest, or come out to this side, and use a different part of the muscle. So that's basically just got to be straight ahead. We allow a little bit of leaning, but not too much leaning. Like, it's not meant to be, something like this where it's not Germans don't limbo. That's not really their thing. So it's more, just a little bit of leaning is okay. And basically the grip has to be by the handle. You can't sort of, hold it by the stein or something like that. And it just needs to be straight out in front of you. So that's kind of the broad strokes of it.
Is there
we
liquid?
usually have judges on hand, for like our state championship competitions or any of our high level competitions. We'll have judges on hand, and if somebody starts, their arm goes too low, they start to lean too much, their elbow starts to bend, we'll issue them a strike, and then after 3 strikes, they get disqualified. And of course, if there's any spillage of any beer, this is empty right now, but if you're competing and you spill any beer, that's an automatic disqualification, based on the Bavarian roots of the sport, not something that would stand in a beer garden.
Right. Thou shalt not waste. Makes sense.
Yes.
I'm assuming they're all filled to the same level of.
Yep. Yeah. So there's a line here. I don't know how well you can see it.
Yeah.
But there's a lip here, and it's actually marked. You probably can't see that, but there's a 1 liter demarcation on it. So that the liquid should be up to that line. And like usually, if you see them especially this time of year, you can see lots of videos and pictures of Oktoberfest where they'll in the tents they'll be filling up the beer steins, and like they're like about here with liquid, and then there's foam up to here. That kind of
Mm.
settles out, and it kind of gets to that point. Those people know what they're doing. But yeah, it should be like if you're doing it at home, you should be having, if you're using water, that's also fine. If you don't want to just make a mess, and if you don't want to have a beer at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday, we usually would fill it up with water to the line. But yeah, up to the line, so it's consistent. And the stein itself just weighs about 3 pounds, plus or minus a few ounces, and then a liter of beer or water is going to weigh a little over 2 pounds. So you're usually like we usually say, expect you're holding about 5 pounds is what it is.
So I feel people think that that's easier than it actually is,
Oh yeah, definitely.
right?
I think so.
Like they're
Yeah.
like, oh, 5 pounds, that's nothing. That's like
Yeah,
a wimpy
famous
weight.
last words.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're talking about like, I go to the gym, I can work out, I can 5
Right.
pounds is nothing, that's not even a warm up. But
Exactly.
yeah, this isn't the same thing as doing some curls or whatever. Like it builds in difficulty over time significantly compared to anything else that you'd be doing with 5 pounds from an athletic perspective.
So which state is the best? Is there like a
Which
particular
state?
state that is
I
like
probably I probably would have to say Texas. So so
attracts? I
we've
can see
been
that.
so we've been working over the years with Hofbräu, one
Mm-hmm.
of the big six Munich breweries.
Yeah.
They put on like a national tournament. That's how I got my start with the sport. Actually, I was competing in their tournament, and so they've been doing that for probably about 15 years at this point, maybe longer. I'm not actually sure when they started, but it was probably in the mid 2000s. And we call it the New Braunfels Texas Dynasty, which is very, I think I didn't make that up, but I think it's very clever.
Yeah,
So
very much so.
there's one town in Texas called New Braunfels, and they have a big festival in the fall. It's called Wurstfest, and it's a big German festival. And they've had I think 4 or 5 different champions, come from that town. So there's something in the water in New Braunfels, and we just launched our state championship there as well this year, and we sold out of our qualifying venue spots. So there's a lot of interest in Steinholding in Texas. So I probably have to say that they're the best.
That's awesome.
I'm from
Now,
Pennsylvania, so I have to begrudge it a little bit and say
I get it.
but I have to give
Yeah.
credit where it's due.
I'm going to assume Latrobe, but that might just be ignorance on my part.
I lived near Pittsburgh for a while. I'm actually
Okay.
from Eastern Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley, the
Okay.
Bethlehem area. So
Oh, I'm in Doylestown in Bucks County. So,
okay, nice.
Now you said that, people say, oh, well, I go to the gym, I work out, I should be able to do this. Is there particular muscles that you can focus on and train to improve your length of time, your stamina in the competition?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I always tell people to kind of approach it a couple different ways. And this is all based on my experience. And a lot of people who have tried sort of the program that I put together after the fact have said, yeah, it definitely works. But usually in the off season, well, when you talk about the off season with Steinholding, like typically most of the interest is going to be like, in the midsummer through maybe the end of October. And then, because that's when all the Oktoberfest festivals are at, breweries and bars and stuff like that. So usually in the off season, I would just focus on weight training, like normal weight training and stuff like that. The main muscles that you're using are going to be your front deltoid, just based on the way you're holding it. A little bit of the side delt as well. And you got to you need a little bit of effort on grip strength and stuff like that. If that ends up being something that's a problem for you, if you don't otherwise work out much, that could be something that could, if you're trying to go for longer times, eventually it's something you need to focus on. But those are the main things. It's really just shoulder strength. But I also tell people that it's not really something that you train for in the gym so much. Like it's good to have, like a good overall physical strength. And, obviously if you have good shoulder strength, that's going to count for something. But it really just comes down to training for endurance, really. Because if you're going to the gym, even if you're doing like high reps, like it's very different. If you're doing 20 rep sets or something like that, that's still going to be very different than just one consistent, like solid isometric hold of something. It's just a
Hmm.
very different way to engage the muscles. So the biggest thing that we tell people to do is basically just practice as much as you can, a couple, maybe 2, 3 times a week. And I developed something that I stumbled upon. I call it a training hold, where you would basically just, go for as long as you can go, practicing, just going with good form, stop and I would use like a stopwatch or something, stop for like 30 seconds and just loosen up and rest and just get right back at it and go as long as you can. And it just kind of forces the muscle to adapt a little bit more quickly to that particular type of training. Because it's, like I said, it's very different than if you're just at the gym doing shoulder presses or something like that. Like that's going to focus more on building, overall muscle strength, but the endurance
Mhm.
doesn't get the same kind of training from that.
So what was it that made you decide from being a competitor to like truly becoming involved? Like why were you like, I am sticking with this. This is my thing.
Right, it's because if you love something, if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. Am I
I
right, Jim? Yeah.
understand.
I've heard that said. I don't know if I agree with it, but maybe
Yeah.
some people. But yeah, I competed. I started competing in 2011. I finally won Hofbräu's championship in 2015, and so at that point, I was like, okay, I'm good to be done, with this from a competition perspective. But I had been involved in the sport for as long as anybody, pretty much at that point, and I was like, I'm in a good position. I've all the people that I've met along the way, like it's been a great experience for me, and I'd like to see more people get the opportunity to do this. And there was a lot of things that I wished resources that I wished that I had had when I was competing, because Hofbräu is a beer company, like they do a great job putting the tournament together, but they're not this isn't a main focus for them, like, and they put resources towards it, but they don't have somebody full time saying, okay, what can we do to build the sport of Moss Krogsstemmen? So I was like, I've been doing this and taking it probably too seriously for 5 years at this point. And
No
so
such
I was
thing.
in a good position to, sort of put it together. I had some contacts and I had a lot of thought and effort that I'd put into it at that point. And I was like, well, I can share this with everybody. And, Hofbräu doing their thing is great, but you can't be a part of their program if unless you sell Hofbräu beer. Like it's just one of the things that they do for their accounts. So, breweries, other bars, stuff like that. There was a big untapped market of places who, they could put on an independent competition, but they didn't have the opportunity to send their winner along to something else, to be part of something bigger. So that's kind of where we wanted to go with things. And that's what we're working towards now.
How often do you guys use phrases like untapped and just giggle a little bit where you're like, I get
Untapped
it?
resources.
Yeah.
There's really, yeah, if you look for them, there's really a lot of beer
Yeah.
and Stein
Yes.
puns out there.
Is there a dress code for the competition, or is it
We
lederhosen, or
do
is it just
have
whatever you?
Please.
Yeah, so well, not really. So we have some judging guidelines we call them equipment guidelines. So basically, like, so what I'm wearing right now isn't good,
Mm,
like for a couple of reasons. Like, you don't want to be wearing a dress shirt because it's not going to give you the full range of motion that you want to be. It's going to be sort of pulling at you in a weird way. But also, like we always say that if in our judging guidelines, if someone's competing in a long sleeve shirt, that they have to roll up past their elbow, because if I'm bending my arm a little bit, you can't see it nearly as well if you can't
mm,
actually see my elbow.
Right.
So that's one of the main things that we tell people. Um, Otherwise, we don't allow any kind of grip powders. Talking about the grip strength. No
Mhm.
pine tar or anything like that. We've never
yeah,
actually seen anybody try to use it. But when I was putting the rules together, I was like, what are the things that I just want to just get out of there right away? They don't even allow
right.
people the option. And like a bench press shirt, which is actually something that someone has asked me about. I don't know if you're familiar with like powerlifting and
Mhm.
bench pressing. It's sort of like I don't know how to describe it other than it's almost like a scuba suit type material, but it's like super, like almost like rigid in how much it pulls. So like if you're just standing
Mm,
up, like your arms are just gonna be held like this just by like the tension of the shirt. So that's gonna obviously give you a big advantage if you're wearing something like that. But otherwise, I just usually would recommend like a t-shirt or something with a little bit of flex to it.
is there music playing during this, or is it just cheering? Like, do you also have to just sort of mentally prepare that there's going to be accordion playing while you're standing there holding?
If you're lucky, there's going to
Yeah.
be some Oompa band playing. I
Yes.
actually, yeah, I think that's sort of what you would see at an Oktoberfest or something like that. Yeah, I mean, usually, in terms of people cheering, like it is something that really people get behind. People love to do it, and it's also a great, spectator sport. There's a lot of, sort of Monday morning and water cooler judging and quarterbacking, stuff like that that we've definitely seen over the years. So people really get into it and enjoy competing and also just watching and getting angry about who should win and who shouldn't, like any other sport pretty much. But yeah, it's always nice when they're when if you're at a place and they have a band playing or something like that, so you're not just alone with your thoughts too much.
Do people try to harass one another and try to distract them, or is it mostly just, cheering for who you want? And
It's mostly good sportsmanship, honestly.
that's
Like
good.
especially among the competitors. Like I've never really seen too much. Like that's one of the things that I loved about it when I was getting into it. When I was competing, just the people that I would meet, from across the country, people I never would have met otherwise, that were getting together and just coming together around this honestly kind of ridiculous thing that we all got
Mhm.
to do. Having beers together and just cheering each other on, and you know, especially if you're kind of new to it and you're just kind of getting into it, it's just a really fun kind of supportive environment. So I haven't
Mhm.
really seen too much, from heckling or anything like that outside of good natured type stuff. But yeah, not really too much of that.
It's, what is the situation with nicknames in this
Mhm.
sport? Are there players who are? I'm trying to think of a good one. There's got to be like a kegerator, some big dude who's,
Oh, for sure.
So
There's got
there's not as much of that yet as you would hope. So
and
that's
that's why
something that I'm
we're
looking to
here to
build with
help.
the sport.
Yeah.
But
yes,
I think it's a missed opportunity to
definitely.
yeah. So like that's something that we want to do with the US Steinholding Association and the state championships, and we're hoping in 2025 will be the year. It'll be the 10th anniversary of the association, that we're going to have enough state events to sort of have them all come together into a national championship, where we'd invite all the state championships to come, state champions to come together and compete against each other. I think something like that is like it's really valuable to any sport, probably, to like um, cultivate the fan base and cultivate the competitors as well, to like make sure you have the same people coming back, so that there's personalities that people can root for. Because like well, you guys might know more about it than I do, but like I wouldn't know much of anything about hot dog eating outside of Kobayashi and
Hmm.
Joey Chestnut. So like those
Mhm.
are names that probably 90% of America has heard for some reason.
Right.
That otherwise you wouldn't know much about that sport. But they're just sort of personalities who are a fixture that kind of draw you back to it. So I'm hoping to do the same thing with Stein Holding, because I think that would help draw more people to it and get more attention.
Are there relays? Like, could there be like tag team
Ooh.
Stein holding?
We've considered. I've been thinking about different ways to kind of make it a little bit, I don't know, complicated. I
Yeah.
mean, like,
Hmm.
I mean,
outside
it's
of the
still
rules that I,
complicated. Just
yeah, well,
add
it's,
add to it.
yeah, so it's simple, but it's not easy, is how I
Right.
usually describe it.
Yes.
But just in terms of saying, okay, like what are other things that we could do to add some variety to it? And that is something that I've considered doing, like a team relay or something like that, where you could get a handful of people together and see how long you can go. Even adding, incorporating, like if you say you have a 3-person team and have 4 different rounds though. So 3 people go, and then one of the people has to go a second time. So that adds another element of training, and trying to recover and add some strategy to it, things like that. But yeah, as of right now, it's all just single person. Men's, we have separate men's competitions, separate women's competitions, and it's all individual right now.
And I saw on the
Nice.
website that I think the American record is 21 minutes, roughly.
Yep.
What is an average for a well-trained Steinholder?
I think someone who's well trained, who's been working at it a bit, is probably going to be able to get up around 10 minutes if they've
Okay.
dedicated a few months to it, to sort of going through the training program, and just putting in the time consistently. Usually at just we're kind of late in the season now. We're starting to get the from our qualifying venues, we're starting to get the times back from their winners, so that we know who to invite to the state finals and things like that. And we ask for their competition times as well, just so we know what to expect. And a lot of what we're seeing is it pretty much aligns with what we've told people in the past. Is that usually for a men's competition, you can expect somewhere in the 4 to 6 minute range, just for
Hmm.
untrained normal dude, at a bar,
Right.
not really planning or thinking it through too much, just going up and trying it. And then for women, it's usually about 2 to 3 minutes, somewhere in that range. Um, and
I,
I think the women's record is, I want to say, 6 minutes and 12 seconds. It's on the same page that you're probably looking at there, but it's a little, I think, a little over 6 minutes 10 seconds.
So that's
So
just begging to be broken.
I was gonna say, I feel like we can totally top. I think I could do that. I think I could train and do that, beat that.
I feel confident.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more open than the men's competition at this point, just
Hmm.
because it's only been in really probably the last, I'm trying to think when Hofbräu incorporated. They were probably 10 years into the men's competitions before they brought a women's competition into it, before there was enough interest from their venues to do that. But
Hmm.
that's something that we like there. So every venue that signs up for us with US Steinholding Association, we say you get a men's entrance and a women's entrance, and we'll probably try to, we haven't had to like be forceful about it or anything, but there's usually we usually get less names back from the women's side of things. So there's definitely something more that I would like to do to try to get the sport bigger, with
Hmm.
women, and make sure that we have the same sort of equity there and have the same amount of women competing as men. But I think
It'll
it's still
happen.
something that's building with the sport. But I think, like you said, I think there haven't it hasn't been something that we've had organized competition for women for as long as we have for the men. So I think it is, I don't want to say a soft record because it's very difficult even for a man to go that long.
Of
I
course,
can
Yeah.
tell
yeah,
you
of
from
course,
experience, but
yeah.
it is something that it would be much easier for a woman to break that 6:15 mark than it would be for a man to break that 21:15 mark.
Right.
So I think,
It's a
yeah,
good
well, I mean,
time
we'll
to,
see
it's
what
a good
happens.
time to get in, because even if your record just gets broken right away, because people keep coming, you could still be former record holder.
Yeah, yeah,
Very
and I
true.
think,
So,
I set the record in 2015 when I won the national championship with 17 minutes and 11 seconds, and then my record has been broken I think 3 times since then. So the last couple of years it has been a little bit. The times haven't been quite as high. I'd say the median, sort of the average of the times is
Right.
moving up, which is great. But I think like the high end times are not moving up quite as much because
mhm,
we're starting to see a lot of, like I mentioned before about the leaning. Like that was one of the rules that we sort of were seeing that we needed to make some adjustments to and be a little bit more strict about that, because I can show you what I mean. So
Please.
if you if your arm is going to be parallel to the ground,
Hmm.
like you can lean back and your arm stays parallel to the ground, right? But if
mhm,
you're sort of looking at the relation of your arm to your body, if I keep my arm at the same angle to my body and stand up, like now my arm's down here. So
right.
that's
Right.
a very different, it's just different the way that it's actually pulling on the muscle, and then it's working the
Mhm,
muscle. So we were getting into a situation where we just kept seeing a lot of leaning, and it was something that we're like, this isn't really where we want to go with the sport. Like we don't want it to just be sort of a race to see who can lean the furthest back, and we want it to be more upright kind of thing, better posture type thing. We don't want anybody getting injured or something like that. So we started being a little bit more strict about that rule, and I think that is part of why the top times have kind of come down a little bit over the last couple of
mhm.
years, which is we expected to happen. But yeah, so that 21-minute record is going to be very, very difficult to break now that we've made some adjustments to the rule. It would have been very difficult to break anyway, as I
Right.
can tell you from personal
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that we've tried to make some adjustments to.
So obviously there's the physical side of holding this stein out at arm's length for, 15, 20 minutes. How much of it is a mental thing of just pushing yourself 5 more seconds? Because I'm assuming you have to do it in such small increments.
Yeah, it is very much a mental sport, easily as much as it is physical, if not more so, for a couple of reasons. One, because if you've ever tried it, like what I always tell people who are competing for the first time, and even people who are coming to a state championship or something like that, is that, like, make us call you out, do your best, like don't give up, like you can go longer than you want to go, because your body is going to, after just a couple minutes, like maybe 2 minutes or something like that, you're going to start to feel it pretty heavily in your shoulder, and it gets uncomfortable very quickly. So from that perspective, we always tell people, go, you can go longer than you want to, like just tough it out, try to really push yourself. But so from that perspective, just in any given competition, it's difficult. But even more so, like trying to do that a couple times a week, and like pushing yourself beyond that, a couple times a week. That's where it really gets difficult. That's where it really separates people who want to take it seriously and put the effort into it and try to, become a state championship, or state champion or national champion, something like that. Like it takes, I mean, like any other sport that you're competing in, it takes a lot of dedication and hard work. But it's arguably in some ways more unpleasant than if you're trying to practice for football or something like that, because like you're still doing some physical stuff, but like you're probably enjoying some of that, whereas with stein holding, there's not a lot of it that you're probably enjoying. Like it's a different feeling when you get up in front of people, and there's a crowd cheering you on, and like that's fun, like absolutely is fun.
Yeah.
But in terms of like just standing in your garage or standing in your kitchen with a stein full of water a couple times a week, and just trying to grind it out, like that part is not fun. So it takes a lot of discipline, on a given competition day, and then also just to get yourself to that point where you're at competition level to be able to do something like that.
That's what your
Certainly.
neighbors and children are for, though. You just make them come over and cheer you on while you're standing in the garage.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You
That's
can
a good
offer
point.
them
Yeah,
beer, but not the children, but you could, offer the neighbors beer
sure.
after the
Yeah,
fact.
that's the one good thing about about the sport. Well, there's a lot of good things about it. That's one
Many
thing
good
about the
things.
sport that's nice, is that and we always tell people as well that, even I think there's been a little bit of a shift in my mindset over the years, because I would always, I think it was easy to just be like, oh, just do your best, try not to be the first one out.
Yeah.
But like, and people will still say that to me, and I'm like, honestly, like if you're the first one out, that means you get to drink the coldest beer. That's sort of how
Exactly.
I've tried to turn it around a little bit, because we just want everybody to have fun. So we're not trying to shame somebody. Like, somebody has to be the first one out. As long as you do your best and have a good time, it's fine. And you get the coldest beer. Like, if you have somebody standing there for 20 minutes in the sun trying to drink a beer after that, it's not going to be nearly as good.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
you're in
true.
England.
Lukewarm at best.
The
Yeah.
victory is not as not quite as sweet as being the loser.
Yeah, in some ways, exactly.
Yeah, I love it.
So, I mean, I was going to say where you go from here, but it seems like you've got plans underway to really grow the sport, to move it up to another level. Because it seems like something that somebody might like. How did you find out about it? Was this just you were at a bar one night and you're like, oh, they're doing a Steinholding? I'll give this a shot. Was it that
Pretty much.
simple?
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I hear from a lot of people. I think so. It was in 2011 when I was competing, and I was like I said, I was living in Pittsburgh at the time, and I like to go, like, there's a Hofbräu house in Pittsburgh, which is one of the, like, the affiliates of Hofbräu, where it's like sort of a huge beer hall, like, based, built in like a replica of the Munich
Mm,
Hofbräu house. And so it was a great place. Like, I love German beer, I love German food, so it was a place that I would like to go anyway. And I just happened to be there one night where they were having a competition, and I was like, I like doing competitive activity type stuff, and gave it a shot. And I came in second place, my first effort, and they said, okay, well, you came in second place, and now you get to come back at next month. We're having our local finals here, like the Hofbräu House finals. So come back and try again. And so I you know not knowing very much what I was doing at that point, like, I was, just filling up a stein in the garage or in the kitchen, and just, trying to see what I could do, and get my time to be a little bit longer, work on my form a little bit. And I ended up winning in Pittsburgh at the Pittsburgh Hofbräu House. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to fly you to New York City to be in the Steuben German American Day Parade, and compete at the Central Park Oktoberfest, up on the stage there. And it was really a surreal experience, and it was incredible. It was a really great time getting to do something like that. And like I said, I competed with them for 5 years before I won their competition in 2015. And that's when I kind of said, this is an amazing sport. It's an amazing opportunity uh, for growth in the sport, and to sort of find there's a gap here that, other venues aren't able to experience this in the same way that I did. And so that's kind of when we started up the organization, and started moving down the road that we're on.
wonderful. Well, if you ever need anyone to swing by and just give you some live commentary and analysis, we are available. We are
Yes.
willing. No fee is too high. We're happy to help out.
We will drink all the beer.
But yeah,
Once
if
we get to
you
the point where, once we have that national championship set up, we can always use good
Yes.
color commentary.
please,
So
we have our own
Yes.
keep in mind for
ABC.
sure.
Yeah, we have our own ABC Sports vet or jackets, so we're
Yes.
available.
Oh, nice.
Totally
Um,
ready.
Do you get to keep the beer? Like, you get to drink it afterwards?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So some places will use water in the steins, like I said. Like, there's actually,
amateurs.
yeah, a little bit, but it's honestly not their fault in a lot of cases, because there are some, like, states and municipalities that only allow beer to be served in a certain size vessel, basically.
That's fair.
So, a lot of times in those types of cases, then, they'll fill it with water, and then just give the competitor a couple of pints afterward, because they can't legally give it to them in this glass,
Right.
which is, it is what it is. It's difficult from our perspective sometimes to know. We have to do some research when we try to go into a new state to see, okay, is it something that, because I mean, they could still have the competition. It's not a drinking game,
Right.
which is something that's even more strictly regulated. And we say, like, you don't have, like, we make it very clear, this is not a drinking game. Like, it's associated with beer, it's beer adjacent, but, like, you don't have to drink beer to, like, be a part of it.
Mhm.
And you can use water if you want to. But yeah, there are some states and some even towns, like, strangely, that'll just be a municipality that says, we don't want anything over 20 ounces served, for example. So this is 33.8 ounces is what a liter is. So obviously in those situations, most, if there's going to be some sort of restrictions on it, usually a liter isn't going to work, but they can still use water.
And if that's the only restriction they're putting on you, that doesn't seem like too bad a thing either. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's
We can
almost
still
like, I
do
don't,
this.
why bother? I
Yeah.
mean, I could just buy two cans of beer and drink those if there's really a problem. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, Jim, thank you so much for your time. This
Thank
was
you.
fascinating. We will keep an eye out, but please keep us in the loop with anything. We love let listeners know about past guests, any other events that we'd love to even talk to this year's winner whenever that happens. You know what I mean? Like, we would love to just stay in touch and be adjacent to the sport and as you guys are clearly going somewhere and you've got something that's clearly taken off.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Hopefully, keep
Yes.
keep on moving up.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Love talking
awesome.
about it with you.
Okay. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. For more information about Steinholding and the US Steinholding Association, you can check out their website, ussteinholding.com. You can also find them on Facebook, where they're at facebook.com/USA Steinholding, and they are also under the same name on Instagram.
Why the Podcast is produced by the Professional Production Company. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts because we're shallow and need constant validation. For more information, you can check out our website, whythepodcast.com. And like everyone else, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Today's show was recorded and produced by Heidi Hedquist and myself from our world headquarters, located on the second floor of the professional office building, centrally located downtown. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Flash, we're coming home.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?